Hello, welcome back to another random palm reading. I'm Pisces Palmist, the online palmistry reader, reading the palms of complete unknowns to decipher and divine all I can from the hands alone, teaching you palmistry while at the same time enabling and empowering mystery clients in terms of self-improvement, self-development, and self-awareness. Palmistry is the most powerful tool for self-understanding, the most accessible and the most cheapest. They are attached to you, for goodness sake. All you need to do is know, and that's what I'm here to do. Now, I'm going to be showing you a couple of hands here, and this is where we start our journey. I know nothing about this person, same as you. And at the end of this video, we're going to have a really good understanding from their hands alone of their personality or their traits, their potential health and a love life, and their career prospects, their potential for the development of their skills and also their future. So, to answer the very basic question, who is this person? Who are we dealing with? We really have to ask, what are the hands telling us? And firstly, I'm going to be looking at the hand shape and fingers. Now, at first glance, looking at the right hand, I would think this is potentially a dynamic hand. But then I look at the left and I realize that the angle is taken more appropriately here. And what we actually have is someone who is useful. Now, when I say a useful hand, this is a personality template, a classification of hand. You can have a look on my website for more detail as to what I mean by the useful hand. It's a category 1 type of 12 in a new, well, not a new, but a method of hand type classification that I've tried to sort of bring to light, and that is one that David Brandon Jones created. Now, useful hands are superb with their hands, and that can be seen by the angle at the back of the thumb here. It's a very strong angle. It's very pronounced, and you get the sense that this person is very good with their hands. They're good crafters. They express themselves through creating something, through the act of a tangible result, through hard work and effort. And useful hands really stand for practicality and loyalty and a grounded approach in just about all things that they do. And I noticed that this person's fingers all lean towards the Saturn finger. And so this person's sense of integrity and their moral compass is strong. Their sense of right and wrong, their contributions towards society and their family as well. And that's evident by the strong loyalty line here as well. That's a very typical feature of the useful hand as well. Like the primary, the useful hand has, an undercurrent of complex emotions they find very difficult to articulate. And these can manifest as issues in terms of, coping mechanisms. And often they can, resort to things like drinking. That can sometimes be seen by an over sort of reddened lunar mount. I don't see that here, although I do see something of a widened basal phalanx of Jupiter. Simply put, that shows a connection with a need to dominate and control the physical urges and desires. So it is often associated with sex, food, television, chocolate, alcohol, drugs, womanizing. It's all the things that satisfy the baser desires. It's a need to control physically, practically, on a ground level. The other area where we look for desire is certainly the Venus Mount. And the Venus Mount itself is widened somewhat by a lifeline that stretches, boldly reaches outwards towards the wider world. And this is made possible by the way that the lifeline actually jumps. It sort of juts outwards here. You can kind of get the impression that this person was going to live something of a sheltered life, but then there's this expanse of exploration and experience, and it increases this capacity of all things experienced in life. That's probably a pretty good way to put it. That's what the Venus Mount shows, and the contour of the lifeline that is inside it. So what I do notice here is a whirl on Venus. Now, this is a very telling sign because it shows here quite a unique, an individual perspective on desire itself. We're jumping from one sort of dot to the other here a little bit, and we'll pin these dots in our detective corkboard because it's really important that we come back to these points and corroborate them. Now, it shows this person has a flair for there's a creative flair here, which is not very common in useful hands. So again, this combination of crafting and creativity, and there's a flair for it here. The practical nature of this person shows that this person has a flair, a creative flair in something that's practical. But also they likely have experiences in exploring desire in quite a unique way. And that is what this whirl is showing here on Venus. Now, that's the left hand, so we're looking at what's internal. This person thinks about what it is they want, and they probably have quite strong sexual needs as well. And there is something of a whirl here on Venus, the right hand as well. Now, to jump from one clue to another, again, we have here a Mercury finger on the right hand that leans a little bit further away, it seems, naturally speaking, than on the left. And that shows that this person has, in some way, forged a life for themselves where they won't be confined in how they express themselves. So there is potentially a side to this person where they have a need to express themselves, and sex is included that in a way that's very personalized, very individual, very unique, private. And again, jumping from that clue to another, being this need for not to be confined is shown as well in the Saturn finger. This person has a good sense of right and wrong. Just want to be clear about that. They have a strong sense of morality and traditional values. But it's quite a unique one. Again, it's quite unique because the Saturn finger in itself is actually quite short. And I mean, initially I thought, okay, Apollo seems quite long, Jupiter seemed, long enough. But then I realized actually Saturn's just kind of short. And that shows us someone who has their own kind of ideas about bureaucracy and law and regulation and order. They're going to do things in their own way. They won't be confined by red tape. They will break the law if they feel they're doing the right thing. Because to this person, right and wrong and the law are two very different things. I mean, they are really, aren't they? But for this person, that is clear. Whereas in actual fact, most useful hands, especially if square-tipped fingertips, these are obviously very rounded, so this person's very good at living in the moment. And again, that creates an extra sense of personality, a greater layer of personality and creativity, a need to kind of feel and live in the moment. That's what the kind of rounded fingertips create. The squareness creates rigidity and order and keeping things confined and in their right place. Security. And those things really kind of sum up the useful hand quite well. However, we have that kind of mixed personality here. This is someone who will certainly fight for what they feel is right. They are cool, calm, and collected. But if you mess with them or theirs, you will regret it. And I say they will fight for what they love because the inner Mars mount, it's strong. The lifeline appears to sort of make way for this. This need to fight, this motivation, this determination and drive and this sheer willpower, anger being the great motivator. This is something that they've, been in touch with, I would say, before. And I say that because of this key event right here, which is about the age of 24. Now, for maybe a 7-year period up to 24, this person's life was in some way, their way of life was in some way threatened. And there was a need here, after a moment of upheaval, disappointment, and hurt, to really make a change and rise out of the situation. And this is why we have, and it's certainly related to anger as well. This again being the great motivator to change their situation, to no longer be under threat by the way in which they choose to live um, or were just living. You know, there was a threat here of potentially imprisonment or just being just a certain feeling here, potentially a sort of an inner struggle here, and getting removing themselves out of that situation is what allowed them to explore and increase this kind of boundary. And it's a clear sign for me that this person moved at the age of 24 and their way of life was no longer under threat. Now, looking at the right hand here, we can quite clearly see that there is something of a square here on the right hand up until the same age. So it's showing here actually that there was a very real physical threat of that isolation from society, of hospitalization or imprisonment. And once again, notice how the lifeline, where this threat begins, a secondary lifeline is sort of drawn up here. You know, it's where this threat begins, it creates this almost square, creates this secondary lifeline. And so this was the original lifeline that actually, in a sense, turns into a Mars line. It's a weird one. This person moves. Had they not have moved, this would have been their only lifeline, and it would have been stronger because it wouldn't have acted as a Mars line. This, in a sense, is their life at home, and it's still a part of them. It's still who they are. They've not forgotten their heritage or their family back home, or what it was like to live that life, or the values and lessons that they learned from that life, their heritage and their culture, their ideologies, their religious beliefs, potentially. This is who they are, and this is why this Mars line here, this need to fight and persevere in their environment, their new environment, is related to this kind of way of life and this way of thinking. Now, I've just spotted something truly remarkable. Look at this. This is a loop between Jupiter and Saturn in the skin ridge patterns known as dermatoglyphics. And this particular loop is known as the Rajah loop. Never actually seen it before. Now, in most palmistry books, this loop is referred to as a loop that means you are in some way related to royalty, that you are literally of royal lineage. I find that remarkable. However, I have read it that this loop also means that you are in some way aspiring to um, you have great ambition and ideology and a need to gain power and control to make great change and influence society for the better. I am actually more inclined to believe the former interpretation, especially being that I've never actually seen it before, and I have read countless hands. I've never seen it before. This is a first. Cannot believe it. I cannot believe it. The Rajah loop. There it is. You saw it here first. While we're on the topic of dermatoglyphics, there is also a loop of seriousness and a loop of, sometimes referred to, a loop of leisure, loop of humor. Um, the length and the angle represents how a person feels in terms of their expressive qualities, and I would say this is more leisurely rather than um, humor, rather than sarcasm or great wit. However, this person is certainly very intelligent. I'd say that because the Mercury finger is indeed long when we offset the length of it against the bottom two phalanges of Apollo in conjunction with the length of the headline. It does, in fact, reach underneath the Mercury mount itself. So these two signs together show us someone who has uh, certain intelligences that are quite high. The other noticeable thing about dermatoglyphics in this person's hand is the nature loop. This person really responds well to nature. In fact, they probably suit a life that is more um, natural, for lack of a better word. They require simplicity and order. As I said, this is a calm and collected individual on the surface, but underneath all of that, there are very many complex layers to this person, and they probably do find it difficult to articulate their emotions. And so, whenever they become stressed, change likely does stress them out. It does, often it is the case with useful hands, particularly the more square features you see. Luckily, this, as I say, rounder tips are helping this person become that adaptable person this person has needed to be. Walking amongst nature will likely have a very calming effect on this person, and they probably do feel in some way inspired by nature and all things uh, within that kind of natural beauty. The fingertips themselves, the first phalanges of the fingers are quite long on all the fingers, and this shows a very spiritually receptive person, quite an emotionally responsive person. I'm getting very responsible vibes from this person altogether. So I would think this person is quite actually emotionally intelligent. Sensible people always have this loop of sensibility, but also being that all the fingers lean towards Saturn on the left hand internally, this person has that, moral integrity. I find it very interesting that on the right hand, the fingers are more sort of naturally splayed outwards, and it shows a more sort of outgoing person on the surface. There are two sides to this person's character. As I say, this person has a very unique an individual way in which they explore. So there's a need here to sort of hide potentially an aspect about them, or at least that's how they feel, which is a kind of a shame because it's a key aspect of the way in which they express themselves. Now, looking at the fingerprint patterns themselves, you can see there is a clear, unmistakable whirl on Apollo. I think that's a peacock's eye on Jupiter. The left hand has also an unmistakable whirl on Apollo. Saturn has something of a composite whirl on the left hand. There's a real assortment here, yeah, of perspectives. There's a real sort of non-conformist way of thinking when it comes to this person, actually, which is unusual for a useful hand. Again, all of the key and unique factors I'm extracting from this hand in some ways go against the initial hand shape and fingers. And so really it shows me that this person has, the more I see here, the more I realize this person has a unique undercurrent of complexities underneath it all. They have to be someone very different on the exterior because of this sort of very non-conformist way of thinking. And that's probably why we have, as well on the left hand in particular, this detachment in the way that we do this left hand detachment of the lifeline with the headline. This is, the way in which they have to live. This, and it's almost it's a necessity. It's a requirement. It's not a desire so much. And this ambition here is certainly tied to it. Now, jumping back a bit, remember when I said for 7 years up to the age of 24, this person had there was a need to protect their environment, the way in which they lived. There was a threat there of isolation from society. We'll look at the fate line. Just down here, there is a square forming on the fate line, almost protecting this person's destiny. And I find this square really interesting because although it represents the past, it also represents the future because this is a health line right here. And this line is travel. So at the age of, I'm going to say 49, and you can see the loyalty line is tied to this as well. And even if you follow it further, look here, this little line creeps up right here. It's connected. Well, you know, it's connected here. It sort of stops there because of this disappointment. And that again is 59 on that's 59 on the fate line. And this is 59 on the lifeline. This need to fight stops at this time as well. So it shows this person doesn't need to that person who they were back at home that still lives with them and still they carry with them. They no longer need to be that because they move back home again at the age of 49. And this is why this career line that stems, this fate line rather is the more appropriate word, it stems from this loyalty line because what they're doing for their family. Remember what I said about this person being, being so in that awareness of traditional values and contribution towards family, integrity, loyalty. These are very useful hand traits, very earthy traits. This particular path that they've carved for themselves, everything they're doing right now, they're doing for their family. Everything they're doing in this country, they're doing for their family. They're thinking about that. They're probably in contact with their family constantly. And that path is no longer needed at this time. And you can see here, there's this little carving kind of path here that's forging, and it's showing that there is a loss in the family. There's inheritance potentially. And this is why it's sort of striking. It's looking to cut the already struggling to kind of forge sun line. This is someone at home who has passed away, and this person has to uh, go back home and likely um, undertake their role. I'm stalling because I'm thinking in my head at the same time because there's someone here who passes away, and it's not until a few years later that there's this secondary disappointment. This, oh, okay, I've got to do this now. They've got to leave everything they've built, and you know, and it's potentially maybe a second person. Maybe there's something else, a secondary thing they've missed out on at home. They've not been able to be there for family. There's another hurt and disappointment here, and it's at this secondary interval, several years later, that they kind of say, okay, well, I've got to go home, and it's at this age of 49 where this happens, and I think that they will fulfill a role. They will ascend to the throne, if you like, if you want to um, corroborate this detail right here. For all I know, maybe this person literally is royalty. And another sign that family is, tremendously influential and means a great deal to this person is by the fate line on the left hand. Notice how it cuts through the lifeline itself. It comes from inside Venus itself, tucks around here, and it rises up the palm. And yes, it does become more faint, but that's partly because this person is carving their own destiny. And what this really shows you is this person's destiny was forged for them, their destiny was decided by their parents, by their own family. And that shows you the strength, the roots of this person's family is strong. And it goes to sort of show why this person has such strong feelings about their family, about loyalty. The loyalty line as well is something of an indication of love and the loss of love. Look at how it wants to sort of strike and affect the environment, the way in which a person lives their life. The health line here, you can see it matching up to this, and this sort of streaking parallel lines here show internal issues, digestive issues, and this is in some way sort of parallel with this potential family loss. So it shows this person has already suffered, and when they do suffer, their digestive issues pop up. Their digestive tract also suffers, and you can see the headline is sort of cut as well by this. It affects them on every level. They say that the gut is the first brain of the body. In terms of love life, it's quite difficult to see because there is actually not much in the way of a line as such, but you can see tiny little gouges here, thankfully, because of the whitish sort of background here. And you can see that at the age of, I would say, 33, there's one major relationship, and then there's another stronger a little bit later on, probably around the age of about 50. Maybe that coincides with this move for whatever reason. Maybe this person gets married, moves back home because of the marriage. There's certainly a connection with family and that move. So, what does this person do for a living? Well, this person is certainly gifted in terms of their ability to manage and judge. They have a strong authority about them, strong enough character and will It is leavened by just about an equal length of logic, but also the Jupiter and Apollo being so leveled off as well. And the thickness of the fingers in conjunction with the width of the hand is good. It shows a strong personality. It shows leadership qualities, and I think this is someone who people look up to quite naturally, partly because of how they carry themselves. They're, as I say, calm and collected, and they have high, strong morals. They're certainly idealistic as well. Look at the Heartland, look, and just, you can see that it wants to, and it does, in fact, reach, however faint, right up onto Jupiter. Highly idealistic. And as I said before, a very unique um, perspective and perception in the matters of love and desire. Now, the whirl on the Apollo fingertip is always seen in the hands of creative people. And as I have mentioned, useful hands are always creative, but practically so. We also see a whirl on the Venus mount. And again, as I mentioned earlier, that creates a sort of creative flair about a person. That would make this person an exceptional designer of a sort, a craftsman who has a unique sort of functionality in design. They will utilize their hands to make change in a very practical but creative way. So a carpenter would be a good fit for this person. A designer, a fashion designer, a seam. I was going to say a makeup artist, but that's not quite practical enough. Clothing, fashion, design, gardening, carpentry, and hairdressing. These are all potential career roles for this person. But as I say, they're also very gifted with people, social settings, commanding, and judgment. These are two qualities they are very naturally gifted in, which makes sense having that Rajah loop. So this person would make a superb carpenter, but would have some sort of creative flair that would really add something quite original about the way in which they would create things that would just be works of art. And this is the way in which they would make up for this lack of potential ability to express their innermost complex feelings. Their lack of ability to articulate these feelings are made up for in how and what they design their practical creations in whatever that might be. This person could well be a fashion designer or a hairdresser, a barber. So here we are. This is a story of a person, a prince who returns home to ascend to the throne at the age of 49. That's pretty much this person's story, and there may well be marriage at this time as well, or at least a long lasting, strong, loving relationship. Not necessarily marriage, but certainly a faithful union. So there we have it. We started off with complete unknown details and we've arrived at something of a conclusion. It's been a little bit choppy and I know I've been a little bit all over the place, but that is the nature of palm reading. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm very interested to know. There is no greater tool for self-discovery, self-understanding. There's no more accessible or inexpensive tool for this knowing yourself better than reading the palms. They are quite literally attached to you. If you'd like to learn more about palmistry, feel free to email me, or if you'd like a reading yourself, please do check out my website and book a reading with me. I'm happy to answer any questions about palmistry, although I will sometimes take a long time to get back to people. I'm pretty busy. But thank you very much for watching. Please do subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.